tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. You know what time that means. It means it's storytelling time and words. And tonight I have J.M. Shaw in the house, also known as Jennifer Shaw. And get ready for some humor, some laughs, some giggles, all of that stuff. And we're going to talk about the Callum Walker series, her book series. We're going to also talk about autism and ADHD as she was diagnosed as an adult. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff tonight. So get ready. Tonight's tea is going to be parable examples, life lessons, and observance learnings. And we're going to talk deep. So we're going to spill some deep, strong tea. But before we get started, we're going to get you over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel. We're going to get you to ring that little doorbell so you can be notified when these tea times are live. If you'd like to join the live stream as we're streaming and you'd like to leave your comments, questions, and support, you can do that as well in the comment section. If you'd like to stay anonymous, you can reach out to Miss Liz on her Facebook page and DM me, and I will get those questions out to JM tonight. Also, before we get started, we're going to do disclaimer, we're going to do bio, and then we're going to get JM in here, and we're going to spill some tea tonight together and have some fun. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forth dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment and taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that the show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later date and later time for a different show. Now, again, all Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Unless you see a Tea Time on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's a rescheduled special or surprise Tea Time. So now a little bit on my guest. Well, J.M. Shaw lives in Airdrie, Alberta. I hope I said it right. I'll get her to say it. With her husband and 2 young children. She and her family embarked upon a journey of understanding, acceptance, and lifelong learning when they discovered their shared diagnosis of autism and ADHD. Writing is her passion, and with experience and interest in heart care, psychology, martial arts, and personal training, she pours her unique insights and knowledge into all her creative fictions. So let me get her in here and let's spill some tea together. Let me welcome JM in here. Welcome, JM.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. So we talked about this before we went live. I'm going to ask you that question. So who was Jennifer as a little girl and who is Jennifer now?
Okay, so I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I have 4 younger brothers. We lived out in the country. I was the built-in babysitter, and I thought that was my sole purpose in life. And I made my brothers pay. We lived being out in the country, parents would go to town. They'd always bring a kid with them and somebody'd have to stay and babysit. And I spent a lot of time out in the country collecting babysitting money. I had a lot to bring with me whenever I did go to town. So,
well, Jennifer, I think that's, being the oldest myself, that's what we felt like, right? Being the oldest, we were the babysitter. We were the one that had to watch over everybody. We had to make sure everybody was staying in line, like the ducks in a row.
yes.
And that, right? So, Jennifer, tell me a little bit about who you are today as an adult.
Now I'm a mom. I'm an author. I'm a dreamer. I'm a very what if person, so I don't stop thinking. And it's very creative. I try to look at the world. I see the world in a different light, I think. Being that I have autism and ADHD, my mind is always open and I'm noticing details that maybe other people don't know. But then I'm always constantly thinking, it's like, I wonder what would happen if, or what would it be like if, and then twist these details that I'm seeing in my head and think about a new story.
So let's talk about autism and ADHD. At what age were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 2019. I was at the time, I won't tell you how old I was at the time because then you'll figure it out, but you'll probably figure it out anyway with the mathing. So I was 2019 is when I was diagnosed, and it was after both of my sons were diagnosed with autism and ADHD. I thought, that's what you're looking for? Because that's been me. I've been doing that my whole life. So then I got my diagnosis and wasn't surprised, but it did open my eyes to a lot of things in the past that were confusing to me.
So living with autism and ADHD, do you get like this weird kind of feel that people look at you differently, act differently with you?
I don't think so. I mean, I've always kind of masked it really well and just sort of mimicked other people's behaviors and stuff. I spent a lot of time watching people. I remember when I was younger, I didn't know how to converse with people. And so what I would do is I'd have notebooks and I'd watch, okay, so-and-so said this. Oh, that was the reaction. Oh, there's a smile. Okay, that must be what I say when somebody says that. And I have notebooks of conversation. I still have them. And that's how I learned to try to communicate with people. And if, so it was like my script, right? But if I went off script, then I was like, oh, okay, I got to say something that's close, because it was all in my head, right? I memorized it all. It didn't always come off right. And people would look at me like, okay, she's a little weird and stuff like that. But you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world now that I understand that that's just me. And I remember I have never made it a secret. I've shared with people because I have a lot of people saying, well, how did you find out? And I do this. Is that what you do? But I've had other people say, well, what's it like to be autistic? And I'm like, I don't know. What's it like to not be? It's all I know,
So you talk about masking and mimicking.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that for someone who might not know about that.
So it's just basically, it's like you put on a mask, like a figurative mask, and you copy the behaviors of those people around you. So you do a lot of observing, and then you just try to match their energy and their conversations. And, it's like the kids that dress up like Superman. They're not Superman. They know they're not Superman, but they're going to pretend to be Superman. So it's kind of like pretending to be somebody else.
So mimicking and masking, are they similar or?
Yeah, I think they're similar. Yeah. I just use the words interchangeably.
So Jennifer, when did you notice that your children had it?
When they started preschool, that's when, there was like red flags. And I was like, those are red flags. I remember somebody telling me that I had two very busy boys and they were all I knew. So I didn't know any different. I'm like, okay, well, they're hyper and they're active. And I guess that's a good thing. And it wasn't until I babysat a little girl and I thought she was broken because she just sat there quietly and she played. She wasn't trying to dive bomb somebody off the counter or hit somebody in the head with a toy, and I'm just like, kids can do that? And then I started to understand how busy and how much, energy my boys had. That was kind of where I realized too, is something was up. But then when they started in preschool, the preschool teachers were noticing things as well.
So did you all get diagnosed at the same time?
Within a year.
Within a year?
It was a very emotional year.
So Jennifer, what kind of testings were done?
So both of my boys and me had an ADOS assessment, and it was a 3-day assessment with a registered psychologist. They do they didn't do play therapy with me, but you're asked history, you're asked when you meet milestones, you're interviewed another family member, they watch you in action. In my case, I was given an intelligence test, and I had to write up a questionnaire and stuff as well, because they didn't really have, like the ADOS assessments are for younger people. They don't really do a lot with the older ones and stuff, so they had to modify it for me.
So within a year, the whole family was diagnosed?
No, just me and both my boys. Yeah, my husband is not diagnosed with autism, although I wonder sometimes.
Right, it goes back to the question before we went live, right? What is he?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So for your viewers, I'll explain that. When my kids are half Chinese and half Caucasian, and they don't look 100% like me. And when they were little, I'd take them to the park, and I had one mom come up to me and ask me, what is their father? And me not trying to be funny, I'm just like, a man? It's not an alien.
Well, and
But
like I said to you, right? They didn't ask what the culture of your child's
yeah,
father was, right? They asked who he was, like, and you
yeah,
said a man.
exactly. They worded it differently, but I have very literal brain, so I took it literal, like he's a human being of the male species, from
Yeah.
Mars, I think.
So Jennifer, let's get into. I want to get into your tea because you gave me a really incredible tea.
Yes.
For your tea, you gave me parable examples, and then for your E, you gave me life lessons, and A, you gave me observant learning. Let's talk
Mhm.
about all of those words and why you gave me those.
So, observant learning is very easy. I learn by looking. I've learned by observing people, by watching the world around me. It sparks interest. It helps me learn. I'm a very visual learner. I also am just very imaginative, so I see things in my head. I like parable learning. I like learning through stories and examples. If I can relate something, I'm terrible with memorizing. So if I can relate something in a story format to something that makes sense, then it's a lot easier for me to learn and remember. Medical terminology really sucked. So it's all memorization. So I had to make little skits and names for stories for things and stuff like that. I can't remember my next point, my last point.
Yeah, your E was life lessons.
Oh yes, life lessons. Yeah. Well, I mean, life teaches us is the best teacher. That's what I was saying. We had a thing about kids. They'll learn more by doing and suffering consequences. We call those natural consequences. And I think that's the best life lesson for not doing things and such. And making mistakes. I learned way more from making mistakes. Just normal life stuff, it's like, oh, if you don't watch the bacon on the pan, it can start on fire or just disappear because it burns right to get nothing.
It just burns. It's charcoal.
Yeah.
Throw
Especially
it
when you
out.
like put the lid on it and you walk away and you're on the phone call for a while and then you're like, is it burning? And you come back, you lift the lid, there's a bunch of smoke and there's no bacon. It's gone.
Yeah, magic.
That was an interesting discovery, a life lesson there. But I do like to
Right?
put life lessons into my books too. And I like to in my novels, I like to deal with things like the importance of friends, family. I deal with mental health issues in an adventure setting so that they're not just like smack, smack, smack. Here's a lesson. It's like you're enjoying stuff and
The
entertaining.
pages are coming out and jumping at you, coming at you.
Well, if you flip it fast enough, maybe. But like things like I have a quote from my second book, for example, and we're talking about the difference between good and evil. And there's a quote in there. It's like, well, evil will scream its presence, but light will whisper. I think it's something like the darkness will scream its presence and the light will whisper. I can't remember. And it would take me a minute to find it. So, but there's lessons like that I've learned along the way as well that I'd like to share.
So what got you into writing?
I needed a hobby. I needed an outlet. I was a very lonely, awkward young teenager, almost teenager. And I think I was like 12 years old when I started. And now if you do the math, and I've been tell you, I've been writing for 33 years, you can kind of figure out how old I am. But my mom bought me a typewriter. And I started to write and I started to create. And I was like, oh, you can paint an image with words. What? So I started to write stories. I couldn't find anything I really sparked joy to read, so to speak, to quote Marie Kondo. But I loved that I could create. And I had this wild imagination. I'd watch videos in my head. And so I just start putting them onto paper and stuff. And then it turned into a passion. And then it became an obsession. And now it's just cheaper than therapy.
There you go, right? And you have the control over what you write.
Exactly. It's like the ultimate God complex outlet, It's like it satisfies my God complex. I can do whatever. I could fly for all I want, I mean, I can't really, but I can imagine my character's flying. But then other people have said, am I my main character? And I was like, gosh, no, my main character, I think, would strangle me. I wouldn't survive half the things I put him through, But that being said, there's aspects of my personality in all my characters.
So let's talk about your books. You have the Callum Walker series, but you also have other books as well. But we're going to be talking about the Callum Walker series tonight. So what got that series started?
I was watching a Netflix series called Merlin, and I thought, I have an idea. What if fairy tales were more than stories? Monsters were flesh and blood, and we just didn't know it. So I kind of ran with it. And I created this series. I was never because I've written in all the genres, but the only thing I don't write is I don't write mystery because I get I'm not smart enough. I don't write history because it's boring. I don't write spicy romance because nobody has 3 chapters worth of stamina, and there's enough out there to confuse a whole generation of people. Why would I add to it? But everything else that entertains me, and I get bored easily, so I like entertainment, and I kind of ran with it. So this was a series that is a magical fantasy adventure with lots of action. It's got some supernatural horror and suspense elements kind of sprinkled in for good measure. And through my series, we'll see our world, our time, and a coexisting magical realm. But there's a veil that separates us. We can't see or cross this veil because we don't have magic. But these creatures from this realm that do can and have. And they've been the source of inspiration for our mythologies. My main character, Callum Walker, is a young man born with the ability to use magic. He doesn't know why. He's trying to make the most of it. He gets embroiled in what's going on in this magical realm. And then through each book in the series, we follow him trying to figure out who he is, where he fits in, because he's too magic for here, but too human for there, and then master his abilities to survive this world that's very much over his head. And then it was pointed out to me that his journey is kind of mirroring my journey on trying to figure out my way through society with ADHD and autism.
Well, I guess maybe that's why people asked you if you were the character.
Maybe, possibly.
So how did you come up with the name Callum?
Okay, it was on my list of baby names. My husband didn't like it.
Oh,
I have 2 boys, and my family is Scottish-Irish, and I like these old Celtic names and stuff. So we used a Morgan, we used an Avery, and I'm like, but I really like Callum. I really want that name. So I created a character. It's kind of, you know,
I
kind of got.
I like the name. Like when I was sent the book, I was like, oh, I like that name. That would make a beautiful baby name. Not that anybody should be having babies on my end. Just saying, kids. I know yous are watching, but no, we're just gonna slow that train down.
You can name your pets Callum. It still works there.
There we go, right?
Or you can make a character and write a book with your character named Callum.
I always wanted to get a hamster again. Maybe I'll get a hamster and name it.
Yes. Persephone is a good name for a girl hamster.
Right? So let's talk about book 1 first, and then we'll get into book 2, and then we'll get into the last book, and then we'll talk about the good stuff that's coming in the future.
Perfect. So book 1 is just the starting. I've got to introduce the world. I've got to introduce the character. He's just a, down-to-earth guy, would just love to have, a normal life, but he's got these gifts and he's trying to make the best of it. And so he starts seeing monsters in his city, and he's going to go out and try to defeat them because he figured, well, nobody else can, and I can recognize them, and I have these abilities, so must be what I'm supposed to do. And then he kind of gets caught up in this war between brothers over the magical realm. And one of them is a sorcerer who's figured out a way of stealing magic from others. And the other one is a necromancer who was born with the ability to use natural magic, just like Callum. Humans don't have magic. Humans can't use magic, but every now and then there's one born, kind of like Merlin. So Callum kind of gets caught up in that, and they're both sides, both sides are after him for different reasons. And then he's trying to, figures out this magical realm, meets some creatures. Some of them want to turn him in for amnesty. Others want to help, but they're also too afraid to kind of go on their own and stuff. But he's also prophesied in this well-known realm prophecy that he's going to be the one that ends the war, but it doesn't say how. And so he's got to kind of come to terms with, with who he is and figure out how he's going to end this war that he didn't even know was going on.
So how long did it take you to write the first book?
The rough draft took me about 2 months, but it takes at least 3 times that for editing. Editing is painful and tedious and kind of feels like entering data in a screen. It's, it's like, okay, there's a comma out of place there. There's many layers of editing too. So,
right. Editing is the painful part of writing a book.
It is very painful, but it's necessary, and I like to learn how to write better. So I'm, picking my editor's brains, like, why did you do that? Why do we use it that? Oh, there's a rule for that. Okay. I'm very much a math and science geek. So English was very abstract. I didn't really pay much attention. And so, but now I'm like, okay, now I want to be sure I have complete sentences and no dangling participles and, comma splices and all those kind of stuff. So now I need to learn.
Yeah. But I guess it's a learning journey, right? Because it takes time to get it all in order, right?
Yes.
It's not like we got a magic wand like Merlin and poof, there's a book.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? I just remember the cartoon Merlin where he's packing all his stuff and he's just like, got this bag open, then he starts waving his wand and everything's shrinking and like falling into the bag. I'm like, I wish we could move like that. That would be awesome.
Right?
Yeah,
life would be so much easier.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Mary Poppins, right? Bibbidi boppity boop boop.
Yes.
Like everything is in there, right?
Oh, I know. I'm so jealous. Oh, sorry. I digress.
That's okay. We're both gonna just go squirrel tonight. We're
Yeah.
gonna have some fun, right?
Oh, this is great.
Okay, so book 2. We're getting into book 2.
Yeah, book 2. We've survived book 1. The war is over. Made it through the winter. Poor Callum is trying to get some semblance of normal life. So he's back on the human side of the veil, call it the human world. But he gets dragged back into this big epic fight. There's this, it's the ultimate battle between good versus evil. There's these two deities. They're immaterial, so they need to have living hosts in order to converge with each other. They meet up every so often. It's the last time in the meeting happened, it was 1200 years before. And they meet in this big convergence, and they can't destroy one another because you can't have good without evil. You can't have light without darkness. Otherwise, everything's gone. So this darkness starts rising and it's poisoning the land, and Callum figures out really quick that he's become the vessel of the light. And one of his prior nemesises from the first book becomes the vessel for the darkness. So then at the end of the book, they have to converge. But until they get there, everybody is, all the innocent people across this realm know is that if you kill one, it kills the other. So because the darkness is big, bad, and scary, they're going to go kill Callum because he's not so scary. So he's running.
Going to go for the light guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if they kill him, then the darkness dies, but nobody realizes it's just going to wipe out all of existence, So because you can't have one without the other. And that's just kind of one of those life lessons that I put in there. Yeah. So in the end, there's this big convergence and big epic battle. It was fun.
So how long did that book take you?
2.5 weeks. I was on a roll.
She went from 2 months to 2 weeks. We're going in book 3. We're going 2 days.
Yeah. My husband took the kids out for, he's like, I'm just gonna take him out to the play place, and he spent a few hours there, and then he came back, and I was like, yeah, I wrote 120 pages. I was on a roll. I typed really fast. So, it's just like, wow, I bet you feel lighter getting all those ideas poured out. I was like, yeah, I kind of tired too.
Right? That's a lot.
I mean, I can hyper focus like nobody's business. So I can sit down once I get into the zone and start writing. I can sit down in the morning and I feel like it's only been an hour, and I get up and I look and it's like, oh, it's dark. Maybe the sun hasn't come up. Oh, no, wait, it's night. That's why I feel so tired. I haven't eaten. I haven't drank. Now I have to go to the bathroom really bad. But sorry. But I know there's sometimes though, when I'm in the zone and I feel like I'm along for the ride. So I see my books and my stories as movies in my head, and I'm just writing down what I see. And then there's some times where I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. I want to see where it goes. And then just, I'm along for the ride. And it takes me to places where I'm like, wow, that was good. Where did that come from? Like, I know that came from here, but how, where? And other times I stop to question my sanity.
Well, because you write so fast, do you go back and reread it and check it out, or you just go with the flow?
When I'm in the zone, I just have to go with the flow. If I stop to edit, I'll lose the zone. If my kids come in and ask me for a snack, I'll lose the zone. Yeah.
So when's a better time for you to write? In the evening, afternoon, morning?
I used to write in the evening after my kids would go to bed. I'd have to kick my husband out of the room because he's just as bad as they are. But now my kids are in school, not homeschooling anymore. And my husband's at work. So I'm home during the day. And I'll sit down and I'll write during the day, but I have to set an alarm clock. Otherwise I'll lose track of time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
now let's write in the evening, but I try to keep the evenings now free for family and kid time.
So let's get into book 3 now.
Okay. So book 3 kind of follows with my journey with my character. And I didn't realize when I was writing this until I got into like the 3rd or 4th chapter. And I was like, oh my goodness, my poor character has post-traumatic stress. Because, I'm like writing the symptoms of all that because I know the symptoms because I've researched it all, and I just didn't realize, but I'm like, but it totally makes sense. I'd have post-traumatic stress if I survived, really died a couple times.
Right? Book 1 and 2, my God, like I'm still here.
Yeah. But something has happened in the second book that during this convergence that has damaged the veil. And the veil is cracked. It's not completely broken, but there's holes in it. Now creatures can slip through both ways, right? And so because Callum, although he wasn't necessarily responsible for this, he played a part in this. So he feels responsible. So he's trying to figure out a way to fix this veil. He figures out, there's this temple of the veil farther south. If he follows it along, then he'll find it. At the same time, there's this goddess of the veil who is protecting the veil, and she senses that this has happened. She figures out who it is. She contacts her son, who's a demigod. He's living in, he's got his own history, and he's living in the human side. His name is Jax. And so she contacts her demigod son because she can't leave the veil, and delicate state. It's source stone. So she's got to maintain that. But she sends him to go find Callum and make sure that he's no longer a threat because, his power of the light nearly destroyed the veil. He was the carrier for this light goddess. And anyway, I had so much fun with that. It's like very, very much brotherly banter between the two of them because Jax is very outspoken, charge in there, ask questions later kind of thing. And Callum is very, reserved, conservative, doesn't really talk much, doesn't share with people. So they get under each other's skin and stuff. But Jax catches up to him, and both of them being very stubborn, Jax hurts Callum, injures Callum really bad, trying to get him to tell him that he no longer has the light. And then once they figure out that Callum no longer has the light, and not only that, but they're both there trying to protect the veil, then Jax forces Callum to accept his help, and the friendship kind of develops. But during that time, his past catches up to him, and Callum is abducted and brought to face the harpies that he met in the second book that he royally ticked off, and they torture him. And then he's kind of so there's Jax is also going to try to save him as well, so he's going through some things as well. Jax has to earn forgiveness because he has had a rough past. He grew up in the realm, but he ticked a lot of people off and burned a lot of bridges and stuff, so he has to go through this trial. They call it trial of forgiveness, to earn favor from the fairies so that they'll go and rescue Callum and help him, because he knows where they are.
We got fairies in the book.
Yes, we do. We have elves, fairies, dwarves, all sorts of stuff. Dryads. We got harpies. We got the goddesses of vengeance and retribution. What, sorry?
What are harpies?
Harpies. Oh gosh, they are vicious, vile, sadistic, beautiful. Half human females with like half bird. So they have like bodies with feathers, and they've got wings and tail feathers and all that kind of stuff. They've got beautiful faces, and they look like, very beautiful women, but they're cruel, wicked, and just like to torture and just cause all sorts of grief and stuff. So yeah.
As you're describing that, Jennifer, like I'm thinking of the movie Majestic.
Oh, okay. I've never seen it.
The one with I'm trying to think of the actress that's in it. And she's like an evil stepmom or something.
Oh, okay.
And she turns from the black to the white. And she's kind of like a swan, but a bird. As you're describing this, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of this. I'm trying to think of her name. I can't think of her name for the life of me. If anybody knows who's listening and watching, if you know what I'm talking about, put it in the comments, because I cannot think of it for the life of me. But as you're describing this,
yes,
that's what I'm seeing.
Yes.
And as you're describing the books, I can see the visions of all the characters as well.
So the trials that Jax is going through, kind of help to build him up and change him he wants to be a better person. So he's kind of on that road. At the same time, Callum, who's being tortured, is just being knocked down, and he's getting this twisted view of like, he's nothing but a tool for the gods, and he doesn't deserve his powers. And, he's going to a very dark place during this torture. Well, Jax is trying to save him. And at the end, Callum is saved, but he is, he's got some trauma that he's got to deal with. In the fourth book, we're going to deal with them.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait for the fourth book. And the fourth book is coming out when?
Early next year, early 2025.
Oh, well, there we go. See, 2025, you got to enjoy the 2024 to get into the 2025.
Yeah, yes. I mean, so you can't come up and try to enjoy them as a standalone. You'll miss a bit of the backstory, but I do try to bring elements forward so you can enjoy each one.
Right. So Jennifer, what year do these books take place
in? It's our modern time. There's no specific year that is set. So in the first book, my character starts out as 22 years old. In the third book, he turns 23. Jax, we see he's going to become a very important character going forward. He's 35 in that third book when we first meet him. But
so how did you come up with the characters, Jennifer?
I don't know. I kind of just, visualized how they are and try to, I know their motivations. I guess I just picture them, like who they are before I even envision what they look like. I picture their personalities and stuff. And then even with all my elves and fairies and dwarves and all that kind of stuff, I try to go back to the original mythologies to build them from there. I'm very much a fan of the Supernatural TV series and Game of Thrones. So every society of beings that I have, they have their own political system, their own religions, their own traditions, their own cultures, but there's also some crossover in between, and there's truces and there's alliances and there's enemies, and and try to build them from the history and stuff. And there's a lot of similarities to what people have because they all did that too at some point. But just they all have and then there's characters from each race that kind of befriend our main character.
So it's kind of in the time zone of Game of Thrones, but in the modern world.
There's our world is very much our time, our world, but the magical realm, because they don't need technology, they have magic. It's very medieval.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I'm trying to picture as you're sharing it. I do this. I zone into it and I try to picture everything, right?
I've always envisioned magic and medieval and nature as synonymous with one another, inseparable.
So in your books, do you have any dragons?
Yes, there's a dragon in the first book. Doesn't play a big part, but there will be dragons that come up later. There's a smaller version of a dragon called Wervins, and they show up as well. There's also some griffins. There's some things that we haven't even seen either. There's dryads. There's giants that come up. There's different hierarchies of deities as well. And then that's just on the realm side. There's also stuff on the human side that I'm going to deal with. There's vampires. And in my mind, vampires are always bad guys. I don't know why somebody decided they're going to be sparkly.
Oh no, my other guest is going to be like, no, I want to be a vampire.
Yeah. But because the veil is fractured, in the 5th book, there's crossover.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm writing the 5th book now. I'm starting into it because I'm doing NaNoWriMo, which is the writing thing that most authors do. It's like write 1,500 words a day, every day for the month of November. And by the end of it, you'll have like a small novel. So, so far I've kept up. It's only the 7th day, So I'm working on my 5th book. And then at some point I'm going to step away. I mean, I've already kind of did some, trials for new stories coming up because I've written hundreds and hundreds of stories. And I'd like to, span out and do other books as well.
So you as you mentioned before, Jennifer, you write in other genres and you have other books out there, right? So how many books have you written into?
I've written hundreds, but the Callum Walker series, The Ascension, The Convergence, and The Fractured Veil are my first and only books that I've published.
Okay.
I had a teacher publish a poem one time when I was in grade like 6 or 7, but I don't know what it was in, like a magazine somewhere, but I have no idea where. So I know that she had to ask my mom's permission.
So do you have any intentions of writing outside of the Callum Walker series?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would love to write in. I've written a lot of stories. Like I didn't intend this to become this epic of a series, but I'm having a lot of fun. I've written in sci-fi. I've written in horror. I've done a lot of supernatural, like ghost stories, paranatural. What do you call that? Paranormal.
Paranormal
paranormal
activity.
Speculative. I'm a very what if person. And like I said, this series started with the what if fairy tales are more than stories, monsters, or flesh and blood. We just didn't know it. But I've got a lot of other what ifs there. And that's, kind of spawned a lot of stories. I like to do, past, dealing with things that happened in the past, dealing with things that happen in the future in an adventure setting. Anything that's got it's action adventure is, fine by me.
So how do you feel about time travel?
I've never done a time travel one, but that would be intriguing. You'd have to sit and ponder it for a little bit. And yeah, I think I wouldn't be opposed to writing time travel thing.
Yeah, because like you're jumping from different realms, right? So it's just like jumping from time to time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like jumping in a rabbit hole, right? You just never know where you're going to go.
Yeah, exactly. When like if I get in the zone and stuff, like there's scenes in every single book where I've had people come back and say, "Wow, that was a good scene." I was like, "Yeah, I had no idea what was going to happen either." So it's the best scene for me too. I was just as intrigued as you were.
So would you like to see your books turn into movies?
I would love to see my books turn into a movie, but if that never happens, I mean, I've always seen them as a movie in my head. And I don't have to pay for those special effects, so.
Right, because those are expensive.
Yes, yeah, they're free in my head, and my special effects might be different than somebody else's special effects. And I know
it's always nice to see books turned into movies, right? Because then you get a different perspective of it.
Yeah. And I know I had it pointed out to me by one of my earlier editors that, and maybe it was a symptom of my autism, that I had no physical descriptions of my character. I described the other characters that he could see, but I had no descriptions of my characters. So, and I was like realizing, I was like, I don't think I think that I just don't see people like I see people differently, right? And I just, if I'm describing myself, I don't see myself. I just see this random person. I don't see the details.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to describe without it going overboard. So it was a muscle that I had to use. But you know, I'm getting better at it. Every book that I write, I get better at it and such. But that was just little discoveries I've learned along the way.
So what have you learned about writing books?
I'm learning a lot more about being confident in my dialogue. I've been told that my dialogue it speaks for itself. I don't necessarily need to use as many dialogue tags because each of my characters has their own voice and you can tell that it's them speaking based on how I'm writing. I've also found that I must be doing something right in the visual descriptions of things because people come back to me and they say, hey, I could visualize that really well. And, you know, it wasn't overboard. It wasn't underboard. You could paint a picture in my head. And I was like, yay. And my action scenes have been getting a lot of compliments too, which is, I'm like, great. But there's always something else to learn and I'm eager to learn. And I find that as I go with every book that I write, I get a little bit better or I'm learning something and then, you know, I overuse it until it becomes second nature. And my editor comes back and says, would you stop that now?
You're doing too much of that now.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's that all or nothing, right?
Yes.
It's, you know, I give it all or I give you nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like there's habits you can fall back into. Like I remember I had an editor come telling me that, you know, this chapter, they're sighing a lot. Is your character asthmatic? So I'm like, okay, gotta not do that as much, you know, gotta remember not to do that. And then spell checker is not your friend.
No.
Yes. So I have dyslexia, so I don't always see some of the letters, like if there's multiple letters and stuff. So I had my character to go out to assess this rampart after a dragon attacked. And I missed an S at the end, and my editor came back and says, why are there multiple donkeys out there? Yeah, I'm like, oh, oops.
I just like the S.
Yeah, I just missed an S and it changes the whole meaning of the sentence. It's like, well, and then my mom was reading one of my books and she's pointing out to me, she's like, so he's standing in front of this really, really scary character. He's like up on a stage, is really intimidating. Why is he quacking? I'm like, oh crap. He's supposed to be quaking.
But you know, it adds humor to the book as well. And it's nice because maybe the reader points it out, right? And then brings a conversation to the book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, you know, you could look at your book, you could read it over 1,000,000 times, and there's still going to be something that you miss. I mean, I'm reading a book, it's about this thick, and I think I found maybe 5 or 6 errors in this big book. But I mean, I found errors in Stephen King's novels, in Margaret Atwood's novels and stuff, because it's just, you miss something, you know, you've got that many words, you're going to miss something.
Well, and if you put it in autocorrect, it's going to put it wrong anyway.
Oh yeah, the grammar things that they have on the word, it's not meant for fiction writing, it's for essays. So
yeah. Especially when you want to write something in your own way of expressing it, right? And it doesn't understand what you're trying to say, and you don't understand what it's trying to tell you, and then you're arguing with the program, right?
Yeah,
I'll do that a lot. I'll argue with the Grammarly or autocorrect. I'm like, that's not what I want to say. What the heck are you guys trying to say? Like, you changed the whole thing on me.
But I mean, even if you had it, you know, like I had those words that I had, you know, the wrong words. That was bad guys. And I pointed this out to one of my friends too. Had bad guys chasing him, and you know, if they had gone this way, then their characters wouldn't peruse them. And I was like, do you mean pursue? You know, but it was spelt correctly, so it would have been missed unless you have another set of eyes on it. So, I mean, editing, I think, is vital to a publisher or to a published author. And some people do publish without editors. You know, they have proofreaders or they read it out through themselves. And if you have a really good story, some people, you know, a lot of people will just ignore if there's bad writing or if there's a lot of mistakes or stuff. But if you have enough of them, then there's some people that just you can't get past it.
Yeah. They're just like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then they become the grammar teacher
Yes.
with the red pen.
What to do?
Always with those red pens, right? That's all I remember in school is red pens. And you just cross out.
Yes. Well, that's how track changes works in Word too. It's like red ink. So I'll send it off. It's a document. It's all clean and stuff. And I'll come back and he's like, scratch, 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 scratch. I'm like, well, I feel
Right?
horrible. Yes.
Especially when you see all those crossouts, right? You're just like, oh, do I have to start all over?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it comes down to a word too when you're doing the editing. And I think we've had like I've had long conversations with my editors about a single word, you know, like I like this word because it has a rhythm, it's smooth, it means this, but maybe it's a, you know, abstract meaning or it's distant or you're stretching that and stuff. And they'll say, no, you can use this or this or this. And I was like, I want this. And then at the end you go through it the last time, it's like, I don't want it after all. You just take it out. You'll sit there for hours arguing over a single word and then you don't even end up using it. And it's kind of like, what's the point? So,
or they give you the other words to use and you're like, what the heck is this? Like, this is not what I want to say. Like, you know, and then you're questioning yourself. Is that really what I wanted to say? Is that where I wanted to go?
Yes.
You know,
most of the time though, it's you're thinking something and you're like, I don't know what to say. I'm going to put, I want them. What's it called when you're like rolling, like, you know, a cask of beer down a hill. Oh, barrel rolling. There we go. Your editor come up with that one, you know, and you can't think of it. You're just like, they're rolling down a hill like a cask of beer, you know?
Right. And then they come up with the one word, right? You got a whole sentence and they come back with two words.
Yeah.
You're just like,
do you know what I'm trying to say here? Can you help me? You know, you can write a comment there.
Have you ever written in your books, Jennifer, and said, you know what? I can't think of the word. Can you help me here?
Yes. Yeah. I've done that a lot. It's like, I'm trying to say this, but I don't know how to put it in one word. And my editor, it just amazes me. Like the editors that I've worked with and stuff, they can change like 2 words in the sentence and it totally means something different. I'm like, teach me your magic, please. So yeah, my mom's an English major and you know, I mean, she's taught me a lot in the last little bit because I've actually want to learn. When I was in high school, I had no desire to learn. I'm just like, yeah. I was happy. My teacher in grade 12 before, you know, the last couple months, we're watching Star Wars. So I'm just like, this is awesome. Let's just watch Star Wars and stuff. I never failed anything, but English was so abstract because there's so many different ways to do things. And then there's no rules, hard and set rules. I was always a science geek and math geek because, you know, it's black or it's white. There's no in between. Whereas, you know, English is many, many shades of taupe and gray and black and all sorts of colors of the rainbow and stuff. So, but I've kind of coming up with some rules for myself, like, you know, commas, some rules for comma usage and stuff. If there's a subject and, you know, joining with an and, but, or, and there's a subject following, you have to do, if there's 2 subjects, you have to put a comma between them. I like my em dashes. My editors do not. So I have to learn how to use them and then sparingly use them and stuff. And then just the rules about different things like dialogue. If somebody interrupts somebody else, you have to use a little dash thingy. But then did you put a comma after it or a period or nothing? You know, so I had to go look up some of those and it's just weird.
Yeah,
So
that really bugs me. Like, what do I put next? Like, I don't know when to put it. Like, it really frustrates me. And then they're like, no, before or after. And then sometimes it's before, and then other times it's after. And it's like, okay, you're confusing me. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here.
Is there a rule for when it works here, but not here? And no, there's no rule. It's just whatever you want to do. And then as long as you do the same thing every time, it's okay. It's called style.
So let's get into the science because you mentioned science. Let's talk about science. What is it about science that really grabs you?
It feels like playing games with numbers. I remember going through school and I loved numbers. I count my steps. I go for a walk. I'll add up the numbers on license plates. I thought everybody did that. Apparently not. You know, I will sit here and count, you know, with my fingers when I'm stimming. But I remember I avoided physics when I was in high school because everybody kept saying, oh, physics is so hard. Don't take physics. It's super hard. I never really struggled in math, but I thought, oh, if they're scared of it, I'm going to take it. I'm just going to listen, you know, and not take it.
I like to know where the scary stuff is.
Yeah. And then when I went to college, I had to do upgrading to get into, because I became an X-ray tech, but I had to get upgrading in physics, do the physics grade 11, physics grade 12 in order to get into the X-ray program. that they have in Calgary or in Edmonton here. And so I went in thinking, okay, it's really, really hard. And I think the first couple of weeks I was just like, this isn't hard at all. This is just like playing with numbers. There's equations. You just look for the units and what you need, and then you just plug it in. Sometimes you have to plug in something here to get something there that you can use in that formula and stuff. And I ended up with like 99 in physics 11 and 94 in physics grade 12. And I was just like, why did people think this was hard? But it's just because that's the way my brain works. It's, pattern recognition is high on my abilities. I can Tetris like nobody's business.
So let's go back to the books, the covers of the books. Did you create the covers?
I did not. I'm not that I'm not artistically like,
no, I didn't do that.
No. I found somebody on Fiverr to create them for me. And I think she did a great job. Like, it's kind of, I think it's very intriguing. This is my first cover. And then, my second book, because it takes place, he's running through the woods. Of course, it's got to be green, and it's converging. And then, of course, I didn't know what the color would be for this one, but I had an idea of what to do for the cover. So they're each different colors, and they all have different themes and feelings for the books and stuff. But I wanted to have a cover that was kind of like this person going on a journey, right? They're walking, but I also, there's also has to be some mystery and some magical elements and stuff like that. And, each one of my titles also has dual meaning.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So the ascension would mean to rise up, but it also means in the context of my story, it also means to like accept who you are. So it's an acceptance thing, right? With the convergence, it's the meeting of two things, right? But it's also the convergence of my character with his true path. He's converging with his true path as well. In the fractured veil, we're talking about the veil's fractured because of something that happened at the end of the second book, but my character's sanity is also fracturing a little bit. And the stuff and trauma that they go through plays a big part of that going forward. My fourth book, I'm playing with the title of Callum Walker and the Forsaken Souls.
So that's going to have what kind of layout?
So my character is trying to recover from the trauma that's going on. And he gets wrapped up in this elven feud that's happening between the northern elves that we know of in my series so far, and the southern elves, while he's continuing on his journey with Jax in tow to find this Temple of the Veil so he can fix the veil, right? Because he knows that he can't just keep monitoring, patrolling the cracks forever and making sure things don't get across and stuff. He can't do that forever. It's just too big, too much. So while they're heading south, they go into this territory called the Iron Lands that's ruled by the Daguerreans. And the Daguerreans are these southern elves that have diverted, they're elves, but because they practice dark magic, they were banished to these Iron Lands in the past. And there was a history there that's going on that's going to come up in the fifth book. Anyway, Callum and Jax are taken prisoner, and while they're prisoners, they are slaves working in these mines. There's hundreds and hundreds of others that have been gathered throughout, taken prisoners throughout the year, or throughout the ages, since the end of the Great Century War. And the Daguerreans have been using them to mine these stones that contain natural dark magic. And Callum Walker happens upon an understanding because he has ability to read minds. And he's able to pick up on the fact that the Daguerreans are preparing to invade the Northern Kingdom, but they're not after land. They don't care if they, take over everything. Everybody else thinks it's a war between elves, but it's beyond that. The Daguerreans are going to go after everybody. They're just starting with the elves. And they are after souls, soul sacrifices. They want to sacrifice these souls. So it's a soul, the forsaken souls. But then at the same time, Callum's trying to heal his soul from the trauma that he's gone through. And what better way to heal
as you're sharing their stories, Jennifer? I can see Lord of the Rings. I can see Games of Thrones. I can see Merlin. All of them all mixed together, right? It's almost like the little village that nobody ever spoke about that's over here. If you go and,
I loved the Lord of the Rings. And I went home for Christmas holidays after college, and I read all 3 of the Lord of the Rings novels over 1 week because there was nothing else to do. So, and I loved them. I've read The Hobbits. I loved the Game of Thrones. I loved the idea of sort of an underlying magic. It's not out there smacking you in the face. It's kind of like, it's there, but they don't really understand
It's coming
it.
creepy, right?
Yeah,
It's
like sneaking through the cracks. But then, there's also dragons and stuff. I love dragons, and there's going to be more that are going to come up. But I also like, dealing with the darker side. Like, I had fun tapping into my inner bad guy, and the bad guys get worse and worse, and they all have their own motivations. Like, greed, seeking power. There's one bad guy that, they want to have people, they want respect. It starts with that, because bad guys did not start out as bad guys. They got to grow into something, something had to change them, right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, the good guys also have motives. Not just because they're a good guy doesn't mean they're perfectly good. Everybody's got goods and bads.
Well, they got a little twisted side, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they've got their own selfish motives and stuff like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person. Bad guys can become good guys, and good guys can become bad guys, depending on. And I know my character, because he's very similar to the necromancer when he meets him in book 1. Because they were both born with the ability to use magic, and they will have this specific type of magical energy. He's afraid that given that situation, Callum might have become a necromancer. If he'd have been born into that situation or exposed to those things that the necromancer was, he's afraid that, it could have happened to him too.
I can see so much adventure, right? Like, go and grab a copy, like go and read this book, because I can see it as you're describing it. Like, I'm still trying to figure out that female actress. I think it's Sharon Stone, but I'm not sure. So if anybody that knows who this majestic woman was that acted in the black cape, and then she turned white, she turned good, the bad, then the good, and all of that. And I can see that as you're sharing your book.
I almost feel like it's like Maleficent. Because she was very misunderstood.
I think so. Maybe I have the wrong show or the wrong movie, but as you were describing your characters with the birds, the women, and that turning, all I see is her face. I just see her face, and I'm sure
that was Angelina Jolie, I believe.
That's it. You got it.
The really sharp cheekbones. They had like those prosthetic cheekbones.
That's it. Yes, it was her. Yes, that is the one that I am talking about.
But even if my characters are harpies, or there's some characters that look like plants, there's dryads, some that look like fish. They all have humanistic qualities and human vices as well. So it's things that we can sympathize with.
Yeah, I think these books are they sound incredible, and like, it takes you on a journey. And like I said, I see a little Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Merlin, all coming together as a story that was never told, that you're bringing to the table and saying, hey, you forgot about Callum Walker. And then
yes, a young man that would love to just be a normal guy and just not have all this magic and not have to look over his shoulder all the time and stuff, and would just love to be normal, but there's just no way. He is born different.
Yeah.
And we learn more as we go along.
So you said your book 4 is coming out in 2025, and you're already working on book 5. So book 5 is going to come out the year after, or in between?
It's too early to tell. I'm trying to release a book I would love to release a book every year. This one took a little bit longer because life kind of gets in the way a little bit and stuff, but every 12 to 18 months, I'd like to be able to release a new book in the series, and they'll all show up on my website with links they're available on Amazon, Kindle. My website is www.jmshawauthor.com. And right now there's just the links to Amazon, both Canada and the US, but I will be posting up there links to them. They're also on Kobo. And if you're in the US, they're on Barnes and Noble. And they're in 12 different Indigo Chapters locations across Alberta, the stores. So you'd have to look on their online to see which ones they're in, but or you could always ask. I have social media. So on my website, that first page right on the bottom, you can follow me on my Facebook or my Instagram. I also have an email, and you can send me messages and ask me, hey, where can I find my book? I'm in such and such city, or how do I, where you can see my event page and see where I'm going to be for events and book signings.
Well, mentioning events, I found you have 2 events coming up on the 9th and 10th, correct?
Yes, this weekend. Yes. I'm going to be doing book signings at the Chinook Mall chapters location in Calgary.
So if anybody wants to grab a book and they're
Oh,
in
yeah.
that area,
I'm
come
there
on
to sign
down. Get a
Yes.
signed book,
I
right?
always say to those people that if you've bought a book before and you've missed me, if you've come to my book signings, I will sign a book for you. You don't have to, the store might want you to bring in a receipt and stuff, but I don't mind you coming in with a copy of your book and I will sign it for you while you're there. I've done that before in the past. I don't mind doing that. I'm just happy that people are enjoying my novels.
But that's good. So any other plans that you have coming up for the future besides writing books?
Yeah, not really. I mean, winter's coming. It's a good reading season. It's good writing season. I'm trying to get into the reading as much because I didn't do as much reading as I did writing. And I've had a lot of people saying, hey, you should read this book. And I love like just fantasy adventure books or adventure books in general and stuff. And I'm just finding that there's so many romantasy books out there. It starts out as, oh, this is going to be a really good adventure. Oh, now I have to fast forward 3 pages. When do these people sleep?
It's like the remote, right? You fast forward that part, then get to the,
Like,
that's a good part. If we could only do that with books, right?
I know. Yes. Yeah. So I'm trying to find some books out there too, because, there's a lot of authors out there that I would love to read and support. And, now I'm starting to build a library of my own. So, and posting reviews. I did not realize until I became a published author how important reviews were. I went on Amazon because my books are on Amazon. At one point, I was 800,000th in line. And then I got 2 active reviews from people who post regularly reviews. And then I went up to 13,000 in line just with 2 reviews, because that's how Amazon will place you in the billions of other books out there. Otherwise, nobody will know I exist if you don't tell people what you think of my book.
Yeah, you're lost in book land.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have the best written book out there in the world, and I'm not saying mine are, but if nobody knows that it's there, nobody's ever going to read it.
So Jennifer, before we wrap up, we're almost at the end here. You gave me the color plum purple.
Yes.
And I want to know why you gave me plum purple, because I love when my guests give me not just one color, but give me an exact color that they love. So why plum purple?
Plum purple is a very royal color. And it's one of my favorite colors. Not just purple. I don't like pale purples. I like dark, rich purple. It's a very vibrant color. And I'm really thinking of that color for my 4th book's novel.
Oh. Well, I think that would go nice because you got a blue, you got a green, you got a red, purple next.
Yes. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a very a dark themed book. I'm finding that my books are becoming, some of them are very dark. They all have a different mood to them. Some of them are a little lighter side. I love the relationship between Jax and Callum that I'm building that continues on through the 4th book and into the 5th book. And I like to drop humor in there to break up some tension and that kind of stuff. So, but they all have their own moods, and each mood I associate with a color.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the cover of book 4 because it's going to be really nice, because plum purple is a nice color.
It is.
It's got a really nice, sharp, strong flavor to it, right?
Oh,
do you like plums?
I don't like plums, but I like the color. Cherries are my favorite.
And any final words for the listening audience tonight?
I guess just keep dreaming, and if I can do it, then you guys can do it. If you're an aspiring author, just keep persistence is the best thing. Just write the story that's out of your heart, and try not to please everybody, because you won't please everybody. There'll be somebody who doesn't like you. Haters will hate, and you just have to grow a tough skin and keep writing what you're dreaming.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. And I had a blast before, during, and after the show. We're going to have some more laughs. So thank you for all the listeners and viewers out there. If you're watching the replay, please push #replay and let me know where you're tuning in from, so I can always give you a shout out or reach out to you and say thank you for the support. Miss Liz will only be back on the 18th of November. That is right. Miss Liz is leaving for a while. I'm going to be doing some vacation time and getting prepared for the reunion show in December. and getting December's lineup all set up. So until then, I will see everybody November 18th with a new guest, and we will serve the TEA all over again. Until then, stay strong, keep being yourselves, and keep serving your real authentic teas out there. And we'll make a difference one cup of tea at a time. Have a good weekend, guys.